I was arranging white roses in my garden when I heard the car pull up. It was a Saturday morning in late April, the kind of spring day that makes you believe in second chances. The tulips I'd planted after Richard died were finally blooming, deep purple ones that he would have loved. My son Marcus emerged from his Tesla, and even from 50 feet away, I could see the tension in his shoulders. Behind him came Victoria, his fiancée of 8 months, wearing oversized sunglasses despite the overcast sky, and carrying what looked like a leather portfolio. "Mom!" Marcus called out, his voice carrying that forced cheerfulness I'd learned to recognize over the past year. "We brought lunch." I set down my pruning shears and pulled off my gardening gloves, studying them as they approached. Marcus was 32 now, a successful software engineer at a startup that had just gone public. He looked so much like his father. The same strong jawline, the same way of running his hand through his hair when he was nervous. And he was nervous now. I could always tell. Victoria air-kissed both my cheeks, leaving a trace of her jasmine perfume. "Margaret, the garden looks absolutely divine. Doesn't it, Marcus?" "Yeah, Mom, it's great." He shifted the takeout bags. "Can we eat inside? We actually wanted to talk to you about something." My stomach tightened slightly, but I kept my smile warm. "Of course, sweetheart. Let me just wash up." As I scrubbed the dirt from under my fingernails in the kitchen sink, I watched them through the window. Victoria was gesturing animatedly, while Marcus nodded, his expression troubled. She opened that leather portfolio and showed him something. He shook his head, and she touched his arm, leaning in close to whisper something that made his shoulders slump. I'd known this moment was coming. I'd felt it building for weeks, over Caesar salads that Victoria had insisted on ordering. "You need to eat more greens, Margaret, at your age." We made small talk. Marcus asked about the book club I'd joined. I asked about their honeymoon plans. Victoria corrected every detail Marcus mentioned, her voice sweet but sharp, like honey laced with lemon. Finally, Victoria set down her fork with a delicate clink and folded her hands on the table. "Margaret, we're so glad we could come today. There's something important we need to discuss about the wedding." "Of course," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "The wedding. September 15th, right?" "September 14th, Victoria corrected with a tight smile. "Which is actually part of what we need to talk about. There have been some changes." Marcus reached for his water glass, not meeting my eyes. "Changes?" I echoed. Victoria opened her portfolio and pulled out what looked like a spreadsheet. "So, as you know, Marcus and I have been planning our dream wedding. We've secured the Rosewood estate. You remember, the venue we showed you photos of? The one with the Italian gardens?" I nodded. I remembered. It was the same venue where I'd attended a charity gala last year, where the bar tab alone had been $30,000. "Well, the thing is, we've had to make some adjustments to the guest list and the overall vision." Victoria's perfectly manicured finger traced down the spreadsheet. "We're going for something very curated, very intentional. Quality over quantity, you know." "That sounds lovely," I said carefully. "We've had to make some difficult decisions about the wedding party." Marcus finally spoke up, his voice quiet. "About roles, I mean. Who does what?" Victoria's hand covered his, silencing him gently. "What Marcus is trying to say is that we've been working with our wedding planner, Sienna. You'd love her. And she's helped us realize that modern weddings are really about the couple's vision, not about fulfilling traditional obligations that don't serve the aesthetic we're creating." Something cold settled in my chest. "I see. The thing is," Victoria continued, her voice taking on a practiced sympathy, "we need to talk about your role at the wedding." The words hung in the air, like a blade waiting to fall. My role? I repeated. Yes. You see, we've decided to do something really unique. Instead of the traditional mother of the groom expectations, you know, the dances, the toasts, the whole conventional thing, we're reimagining everything. Victoria's eyes gleamed with what she probably thought was excitement. My mother will be handling the key maternal moments because, well, the bride's mother traditionally has a more prominent role anyway. And since my father passed away, she really needs this. I felt Marcus flinch beside her. We thought, Victoria pressed on, that you could still attend, of course, but maybe in a more guest-like capacity. You'd be free to just enjoy the day without any pressure or obligations. Doesn't that sound nice? The silence that followed felt like standing at the edge of a cliff. Let me make sure I understand, I said slowly, my voice steady, despite the rage beginning to simmer in my veins. You want me to attend my only son's wedding as a guest. No mother-son dance, no toast, no acknowledgement that I'm the groom's mother. Well, when you put it like that, it sounds harsh. Victoria laughed lightly. But think about it, Margaret. You won't have to worry about giving a speech or anything awkward like that. You can just relax and enjoy the open bar. She leaned forward conspiratorially. Between us, I know public speaking isn't everyone's forte, and at your age, I imagine it might be stressful. At my age, I was 56 years old. I'd given keynote speeches at medical conferences when I was still practicing as a nurse practitioner. I'd eulogized my husband in front of 200 people without shedding a single tear until I was alone in my car. Marcus finally found his voice. Mom, there's one more thing, Victoria interrupted, pulling out another document. This is just the preliminary budget breakdown, but Sienna needs final numbers by Monday. She slid the paper across to me. We've calculated everything, and with the venue, the flowers, I'm having peonies flown in from Holland, the photographer, the 7-course dinner, the band. Well, it comes to about $180,000. I stared at the number. Now, Marcus and I are covering most of it from his stock options, Victoria continued. But traditionally, the groom's family contributes to the rehearsal dinner and some other expenses. We were thinking $40,000 would be appropriate. That would cover the rehearsal dinner at Chez Maurice, the groomsmen's gifts, and maybe the transportation. She said it so casually, as if $40,000 was pocket change, as if she hadn't just told me I'd be demoted to anonymous guest status at my own son's wedding. You want me to give you $40,000, I said flatly, to help pay for a wedding where I have no role. Oh, Margaret, you'd still be there. Victoria's laugh tinkled like breaking glass. And think about it. This way, no one can say you didn't contribute. The rehearsal dinner is actually very important. My mother is spending nearly $60,000 on the ceremony flowers alone. I looked at my son, really looked at him. He was staring at the table, his jaw clenched, a muscle twitching in his cheek, just like his father's used to when he was trapped between his pride and his conscience. Marcus, I said quietly, look at me. He raised his eyes, and I saw something that broke my heart more than Victoria's words ever could. I saw shame, and I saw resignation. Is this what you want? I asked him. Mom, it's complicated. Is this what you want? I repeated, my voice harder now. Victoria's hand tightened on his arm. Marcus and I have talked about this extensively. We're in agreement. I'm asking my son. Marcus swallowed hard. Victoria's right that modern weddings are different, and her mom has been through a lot, and maybe it would be easier if I stepped aside, I finished for him. If I wrote a check and faded into the background. That's not, he started. Let me think about it, I said abruptly, standing up. Thank you for lunch. I need to get back to my garden. Victoria's smile faltered. Well, we really need an answer by Monday. Sienna has to lock in the... I said, I'll think about it. They left 15 minutes later. I watched from my bedroom window as Victoria gestured sharply while talking to Marcus before they got in the car. He looked up at my window once, his expression miserable, before climbing into the driver's seat. I stood there for a long time after they'd gone, staring at the spreadsheet Victoria had left behind. $180,000 for a wedding. $40,000 for my contribution to an event where I'd been erased. Then I walked to my study, opened the drawer where I kept my important documents, and pulled out my checkbook. And I thought about Richard. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in the bed I'd once shared with Richard, staring at the ceiling and listening to the house settle around me. Every creak and groan felt like the building itself was commiserating with me. Richard had died 3 years ago, suddenly, from a heart attack while playing tennis at the club. One moment he was laughing, serving an ace to his doubles partner. The next moment, he was gone. Marcus had been 29 then, still dating casually, still focused on his career. Richard never got to meet Victoria. Sometimes I wondered what he would have thought of her. I got up at 3 a.m. and made tea, sitting at the kitchen table with the spreadsheet in front of me. In the soft glow of the overhead light, I studied the numbers. $180,000 for a single day. More than some people made in 3 years. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. Mom, I'm sorry about today. Can we talk tomorrow? I didn't respond. Instead, I opened my laptop and started researching. I looked up the Rosewood estate, read reviews of Chez Maurice, found Victoria's wedding planner, Sienna's Instagram account. It was exactly what I expected. A carefully curated feed of champagne-colored elegance, of brides who looked like models, of weddings that cost more than cars. Then I opened my banking app and looked at my accounts. Richard had been a thorough man. He'd left me comfortable, very comfortable. The life insurance, the investments, the paid-off house. I didn't need to work, though I'd kept my nursing license active and did occasional consulting work, because I couldn't imagine not working. Money wasn't the issue. The issue was what money represented. I thought about the night Marcus was born. Richard and I had been so young, just 24, and so scared. Marcus had come early, 5 weeks before his due date, weighing only 4 pounds. I'd held him in the NICU, this tiny, fragile thing with tubes and monitors, and I'd made him a promise. I would always protect him. I would always fight for him. I would give him everything. And I had. I'd cut back my hours at the hospital to be home for his school events. I'd sat through every baseball game, even the ones in the freezing rain. I'd helped him with college applications, held him when his first serious girlfriend broke his heart, celebrated every job promotion, every milestone. Richard and I had taught him to be kind, to be honest, to stand up for what was right, even when it was hard. Where was that man now? Sunday morning arrived with rain, fitting my mood perfectly. I was drinking coffee when my sister Helen called. So, she demanded, without preamble, how did the lunch go? Helen lived in Boston, but we talked nearly every day. I'd told her about Marcus and Victoria's visit, though I'd been vague about the details. About as expected, I said tiredly. Margaret, what did she want? So I told her. All of it. The demotion to guest status, the $40,000 request, Victoria's sweetly poisonous comments about my age and stress levels. The silence on the other end lasted so long, I thought the call had dropped. Helen. That absolute? Helen's voice was shaking with fury. Are you serious? She wants you to pay for a wedding where you're not even acknowledged as the mother of the groom? Apparently modern weddings are different, I said, echoing Victoria's words with acid. Modern weddings? Margaret, I've been to plenty of modern weddings. You know what they all still have? Mothers, both mothers, honored and celebrated, because that's basic human decency. Helen took a breath. What did Marcus say? Nothing that mattered. Oh, honey, I'm so sorry. I'm thinking about not giving them anything, I said quietly. Not a single dollar. Good. You absolutely shouldn't. But he's my son, Helen, my only child, which is exactly why this is so unforgivable. She knows what she's doing. She's testing you. She's seeing how much she can take while giving nothing back. Helen's voice softened. Margaret, listen to me. I watched you sacrifice everything for that boy. I watched you put your career on hold, watched you exhaust yourself being the perfect mother. And you were. You are. If you let this happen, if you pay for your own erasure, what are you teaching him? I closed my eyes. I don't know anymore. You're teaching him that disrespect is acceptable as long as he packages it nicely. You're teaching him that money can buy absolution. Is that what Richard would want? Richard. God, what would Richard have done? After we hung up, I sat for a long time with my cold coffee. Then I called my financial advisor, Tom Hendricks. We'd been friends since college, and he'd helped Richard and me build our portfolio over the years. Margaret, Tom's warm voice filled the line. How are you? Ready to talk about that Cancun trip you keep avoiding? Not yet, Tom, but I need some advice. I explained the situation clinically, like I was presenting a patient's case. When I finished, Tom was quiet for a moment. How much are they asking for? $40,000. And your current liquid assets? About $2.4 million between savings, stocks, and bonds. So, they're asking for less than 2% of your net worth. Yes. Margaret, the financial answer is simple. You can afford it. The question isn't financial. It's emotional and moral. What do you want to happen here? I laughed bitterly. I want my son back. The one who called me every Sunday. The one who brought me flowers on Mother's Day and actually meant it. The one who stood up for what was right. Then maybe, Tom said gently, you need to show him what standing up looks like. After the call, I did something I hadn't done in months. I went into Richard's study. We'd moved into this house 15 years ago, and Richard had claimed the small room off the hallway as his domain. I'd barely touched it since he died. His books were still on the shelves, his reading glasses on the desk. Sometimes I came in here just to sit in his chair and remember what it felt like when he was alive, when our life, together, still stretched out ahead of us like an unwritten story. I opened the drawer where he'd kept his personal papers and found what I was looking for. His journal. Richard had been a sporadic journaler, writing only when something weighed on his mind. I'd never read these entries before. They felt too private, too sacred. But now I needed his wisdom, even if it came from the past. I flipped through pages until I found an entry from when Marcus was 16. Richard's neat handwriting filled the page. Had a hard conversation with Marcus today about the Henderson situation. He wants to lie to protect his friend, and I understand the impulse. Loyalty is important, but I told him what my father told me. Sometimes, the most loving thing you can do is refuse to enable someone's worst choices. Sometimes love means letting people face consequences. Margaret thinks I was too hard on him. Maybe I was, but I'd rather he hate me for a month and learn integrity than love me and learn to compromise his character. Being a parent means accepting that you won't always be liked. It means doing what's right, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. I read it 3 times. tears streaming down my face. By Sunday evening, I'd made my decision. I sat down at Richard's desk, pulled out my personal stationery, cream-colored paper with my name embossed at the top, and began to write. Dear Marcus, I've spent the past 2 days thinking about your visit and Victoria's proposal. I've thought about the wedding you're planning, about the role I've been offered, and about the contribution you're expecting from me. I need you to understand something. Money has never been the issue. Your father and I were blessed to build a comfortable life, and we always intended to share that with you. We paid for your education without loans. We helped with your first car, your first apartment deposit. We did these things because we love you and because parents help their children build their lives. But what Victoria proposed isn't about building a life together. It's about buying my silence and my complicity in my own marginalization. You are my only child, Marcus. You are the person I love most in this world. I held you before you took your first breath, and I will love you until I take my last. That love is not conditional on your gratitude or your attention, but it also doesn't require me to accept treatment that demeans the relationship we've built over 32 years. Your father used to say that love without dignity is not love at all. It's desperation. And he taught you, as I did, that respect and kindness are not optional components of relationships. They are the foundation. So here is my decision. I will not be contributing $40,000 to your wedding. I will not be funding an event where I am reduced to the status of a guest, where my role as your mother is erased for someone else's aesthetic vision. However, I want you to understand what this means. This isn't about punishment. This is about boundaries. This is about teaching you, even now, especially now, that actions have consequences, that the people who love you deserve your respect and protection, not your acquiescence to someone who demands they step aside. I hope you marry Victoria on September 14th. I hope you have a beautiful wedding, whatever form it takes. But I will not purchase my own exclusion from your life. The door is always open if you want to talk. Really talk. Not about budgets or venues or modern traditions, but about what's happening here, about what you're accepting and what you're asking me to accept. I love you. I always will. But I love you enough to not enable this. Mom, I read it over twice, sealed it in an envelope, and addressed it to Marcus's apartment. Then I put it in my purse to mail tomorrow morning. But I wasn't done. I opened my laptop and began typing a second letter. Monday morning, I was at the post office when it opened. I mailed the letter to Marcus, then drove to my attorney's office. Jennifer Park had handled Richard's estate and had become a good friend over the years. She looked up in surprise when her secretary showed me in without an appointment. Margaret, is everything okay? I need to make some changes to my will, I said, settling into the chair across from her desk. Can you fit me in? Jennifer closed her laptop. Of course. What kind of changes? I explained the situation. Not emotionally, but factually. Jennifer listened without interrupting, her expression growing more troubled as I continued. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair. And you want to change Marcus's inheritance? Not entirely. But I want to make sure that any money he receives comes with strings attached. Educational trusts for future grandchildren. Charitable donations that have to be honored. Protections that prevent Victoria from getting her hands on everything I've worked for and turning it into peonies flown in from Holland. Jennifer almost smiled at that. I understand. But Margaret, have you considered that this might make things worse between you? Things are already worse, Jennifer. At least this way. I'm protecting what Richard and I built. I'm making sure that if Marcus wants nothing to do with me, he can't have it both ways. Shut me out of his life, but keep access to my bank account. Fair enough. Jennifer pulled out a legal pad. Let's talk about what you want to structure. We spent 2 hours outlining changes. I didn't disinherit Marcus. I couldn't. Not completely. But I created restrictions, protections, requirements, money for education, for health care, for genuine need, not for weddings designed to exclude me or for financing a lifestyle that Victoria wanted to project. This is a strong message, Jennifer said when we'd finished. He'll understand what it means. Good. He should. I was pulling into my driveway when my phone rang. Marcus. I let it go to voicemail. He called again and again. Finally, I answered. Hello, Marcus. Mom. His voice was tight, strained. I got your letter. I thought you might. Can I come over? We need to talk about this. Is Victoria with you? A pause. No, she's at work. Then yes, come over. He arrived 20 minutes later, still in his work clothes, looking like he hadn't slept. The letter was crumpled in his hand as he walked through my door. We sat in the living room, the same room where he'd taken his first steps, where we'd celebrated his high school graduation, where Richard had told him about the birds and the bees, while I pretended to read a magazine in the kitchen and secretly listened to make sure Richard didn't die of embarrassment. Marcus sank onto the couch, the letter on his lap. Mom, before you say anything, I interrupted, I want you to know that I meant every word in that letter. I'm not negotiating. I'm not trying to punish you, but I'm also not going to pretend that what Victoria proposed is acceptable. She didn't mean it the way it sounded, didn't she? I kept my voice even. Marcus, she told me I'd be attending as a guest, that I wouldn't give a toast, wouldn't have a mother-son dance, wouldn't be acknowledged. She said it would be nice for me because I wouldn't have the stress of public speaking. She implied that I'm too old, too incapable, too much of an embarrassment to include. She's just stressed about the wedding. She wants everything perfect. And apparently, perfect means erasing me from the picture while keeping my checkbook. Marcus flinched. That's not fair, isn't it? Be honest with yourself, Marcus. Would she have asked for $40,000 if she was also giving me a real role in the wedding? Or is my money welcome while my presence is not? He stood up, pacing to the window. For a long moment, he just stared out at the garden where I'd been working when he arrived 2 days ago. When he spoke again, his voice was thick. I don't know what to do. About what? About any of it. About Victoria. About the wedding. About... He turned to face me, and I was shocked to see tears in his eyes. About the fact that I know you're right, but I don't know how to fix it without losing her. My heart cracked open. This was my son, the real Marcus, the one who'd been buried under Victoria's demands and expectations. Come sit down, I said gently. He collapsed back onto the couch, and for a moment, he looked like he was 12 years old again, coming to me with problems he didn't know how to solve. Tell me, I said. Tell me everything, and don't protect her or me. Just be honest. So he did. It poured out of him, months of accumulated pressure and doubt. How Victoria had changed after they got engaged, becoming controlling and critical. How she'd systematically cut him off from his old friends, claiming they weren't ambitious enough. How she'd criticized his apartment, his car, his wardrobe, his hobbies. How she'd started making decisions without consulting him, then presenting them as fait accompli. The wedding has been like that from the beginning, Marcus said, his voice ragged. I wanted something small, 100 people maybe, somewhere meaningful, but Victoria said that wasn't sophisticated enough, that people would judge us, that my position at the company meant we needed to make a statement. And you went along with it. I tried to push back at first, but he rubbed his face. She's really good at making me feel like I'm being selfish or unsupportive, like I'm holding her back from the life she deserves. And I love her, Mom. Or I think I do. I don't even know anymore. Marcus, look at me. I waited until his eyes met mine. Love shouldn't feel like this. Love shouldn't require you to diminish yourself or the people who've always loved you. Your father and I weren't perfect, but we built our relationship on respect. We made decisions together. We protected each other. I know. I remember. Then you know what I'm about to say. This wedding, this entire situation, it's a preview of your marriage. If Victoria thinks it's acceptable to exclude your mother from your wedding, what else will she decide you don't need? What else will she cut out of your life in the name of her vision of perfection? Marcus was silent. I need to tell you something, I continued. Something I've never told you before. When your father and I got married, his mother, your grandmother Eleanor, she didn't approve. She thought I wasn't good enough for him. Too young, too unsophisticated, too middle class. Marcus looked up in surprise. I didn't know that. We didn't talk about it much. But Eleanor made our engagement difficult. She tried to take over the wedding planning, tried to exclude my family, tried to turn it into the society event she'd always wanted Richard to have. And do you know what your father did? What? He told her no. He sat her down and he said, Mom, I love you, but I love Margaret more. And if you can't treat her with respect, if you can't accept our marriage and our choices, then we'll get married without you. And he meant it. What happened? Eleanor backed down. She realized she could either have a son and a daughter-in-law, or she could have neither. And over the years, she and I built a relationship. Not perfect, but respectful. We learned to love each other because Richard refused to let her treat me as less than. I leaned forward, taking Marcus's hand. That's what love looks like, sweetheart. It looks like protection. It looks like choosing your partner. Yes, but not at the expense of basic human decency toward others. It looks like standing up to the people you love when they're wrong. Victoria won't back down, Marcus said quietly. If I push back on this, she'll what? Leave you? Marcus, if she'll leave you over treating your mother with respect, then she's doing you a favor. He pulled his hand away, standing up again. You don't understand. It's complicated. It's not complicated. It's actually very simple. Either she respects you and the people you love, or she doesn't. Either you're willing to stand up for what's right, or you're not. I need to think. Then think. But understand this, Marcus. I'm not changing my mind. I will not pay for that wedding, and I won't attend either if I'm going to be treated like a random guest instead of your mother. His head whipped around. You won't come? Not under Victoria's terms. I love you too much to watch you marry someone while she erases me from the ceremony. It would break my heart, and I won't do that to myself. Marcus looked stricken. Mom, go home. Talk to Victoria. Think about what you really want from your life and your marriage. And then decide who you want to be, because the man you've been for the past year, he's not the son I raised, and he's not the man your father hoped you'd become. It was harsh, I knew. But it was also true. Marcus left without another word. The letter still crumpled in his hand. For 3 weeks, I heard nothing. No calls, no texts, no visits. It was as if Marcus had vanished from my life entirely. Helen called daily, checking on me. My book club friends rallied around me, inviting me to dinners and movies. My neighbor, Mrs. Chen, brought over homemade dumplings and sage advice. Good mothers raise children who can stand on their own feet. Sometimes standing means walking away from us for a while. Have faith. But faith was hard when every morning I woke up wondering if I'd made a terrible mistake. I kept myself busy. I volunteered at the free clinic downtown, using my nursing skills to help people who couldn't afford health care. I renovated Richard's study, finally packing up some of his things while keeping the pieces that mattered most. I planted a vegetable garden in the backyard, digging in the soil until my hands ached and my mind went quiet. And I waited. On a Thursday afternoon in late May, my doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. I opened the door in my gardening clothes, dirt under my fingernails, and found Marcus standing there. He looked terrible. He'd lost weight, had dark circles under his eyes, and his shirt was wrinkled, something that never would have passed Victoria's inspection. "Can I come in?" he asked. I stepped aside wordlessly. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where we'd had 1,000 meals together, where I'd helped him with homework, where Richard had taught him to play chess. Marcus pulled out his phone, set it on the table, and took a deep breath. "I ended it," he said. "Victoria and I. The engagement's off." I felt my heart stop. "Marcus, let me explain, please." I nodded. "After I left here that day, I went home, and I really thought about what you said, about what Dad would have wanted, about the man I was becoming." His voice cracked. "And I realized I didn't like him very much." He pulled up something on his phone and slid it across to me. It was a text exchange between him and Victoria. "Marcus, we need to talk about my mom and the wedding." Victoria, "What's there to talk about? Did she agree to the money?" Marcus, "No, and I don't think we should have asked." Victoria, "Are you serious right now?" Marcus, "We need that money. The rehearsal dinner alone is $25,000. Marcus, "Then maybe we should have a less expensive rehearsal dinner." Victoria, "You're being ridiculous. Your mother can afford it. She's just being petty because I won't let her take over my wedding." Marcus, "It's our wedding, not just yours, and she's not trying to take over. She just wants to be included." Victoria, "She is included. She's invited as a guest. What more does she want?" Marcus, "To be my mother, to have a mother-son dance, to give a toast, the normal things that mothers do at their sons' weddings." Victoria, "Your mother has had you for 32 years. This is my day. She needs to learn to share." Marcus, "Share?" Victoria, "You're literally asking her to pay $40,000 to be excluded from her own son's wedding." Victoria, "I'm not having this conversation. Either she pays, or we cut the rehearsal dinner entirely. Your choice." Marcus, "No, Victoria, it's not my choice anymore, because I'm realizing that you've been making all the choices, and I've just been going along with it." Victoria, "What's that supposed to mean?" Marcus, "It means I don't think we should get married." The messages continued. Victoria's increasingly frantic, Marcus's increasingly firm. By the end, she'd called him names I won't repeat, threatened to tell everyone he'd cheated on her, claimed she'd wasted 2 years of her life on him. I looked up from the phone, my eyes wet. "Marcus, I should have done it sooner," he said. "Months ago, maybe even a year ago. But I was afraid of being alone, afraid of admitting I'd made a mistake, afraid of disappointing people. You could never disappoint me, not by making a hard choice to protect yourself." I disappointed Dad. I reached across the table and grabbed his hand. "Your father would be so proud of you right now, so incredibly proud." Marcus's composure finally cracked. He started crying, deep, wrenching sobs that shook his whole body. I came around the table and held him, the way I'd held him when he was small, when the world felt too big and scary, and he needed to know someone was there to catch him. "I'm so sorry, Mom," he choked out. "I'm so sorry for everything, for how I treated you, For what I asked you to do? For choosing her over? Shh. Stop. You found your way back. That's what matters. We sat there for a long time. My son crying in my arms, both of us healing from wounds that had cut deeper than either of us wanted to admit. When he finally pulled away, wiping his face with his sleeve, he gave me a watery smile. So, I don't suppose that $40,000 is still on the table? I stared at him in shock, and then we both started laughing. The kind of laughing that comes from relief and absurdity, in the recognition that sometimes you have to find humor in the darkness.